Query number 4 is actually the most complicated of all of the queries, because this will require us to do 4 separate queries to get the one query. We want a query to calculate and display the lowest average daily star rated cleaning service for each supervisor. Okay, so that's quite a complicated thing that we want to do. So essentially we want to first of all think about every supervisor. So we're going to think about where we're going to get our supervisor data from, which is going to be the supervisor table. We want a daily star rating. That means that essentially if they do more than 2 jobs in a day, we want to know which one is the lowest of that average. So we've got several things going on. We want a daily star rating. We want the average of that daily star rating. Then we want the lowest of that average. And then we're going to display the calculation. Okay, so it kind of goes backwards. So I'll say that again. What we want first of all is the daily star rating. Then we want to have the average of the daily star rating. And then we want the lowest of that average. Okay, so let's make a start. We're going to first of all go into our query design, and we're going to get tables for the supervisor. Okay, because we want it to be sorted by our supervisor. We also want stuff from our job table, because we want to know about not only about the date of the jobs, but we also want to know about the job star rating, and both of those things are in there. And then we finally want to have something about our cleaning service, so we're going to add that table as well. Okay, so we're going to start by essentially thinking about taking our supervisor ID and our supervisor's name. Okay, so all of that is going to go in. That's sort of fairly basic stuff. We're just going to have that in there. Essentially then we want to know something about the date of the service, because we want it to be a daily. So if it's something that's daily, it needs to read the date before it starts to filter. Okay, we want something about the cleaning service to be in there. Okay, and we also want to have something about the job star rating. Okay, so we've now got all the columns that we need to have in there. That's absolutely fine. We are going to do some sorting. So we're going to sort our supervisors alphabetically, and we're also going to sort our jobs in time order as well. Okay, so we've got everything on there that we need to have in there. Also going to show our totals. Everything should be our group by, which is absolutely fine. But let's think about what we want this one to do. What we want this one to do is we want to take this daily job, so the date is important, and we want to find the average of that job star rating. Okay, so I'm going to say it's going to be the daily rating. That's what I'm going to call it. Okay, and it's going to be an average. So instead of the group by, I'm going to change it to an average. When I run that, I've now got supervisor number 1, and I know what supervisor number 1 is going to be called. And then these should all go now in date order. Yes, they do. I've got the 2nd of the 3rd, 17, the 3rd of the 3rd, 17. I've got what the cleaning service is, and then I've got what the daily, the average rating is for that particular day. So notice that it's split into the day and then the type of cleaning service. So if the things on the same date doesn't have different cleaning services, then it's not working out your average. Remember, this has got nothing to do with the cleaners themselves. This is what the supervisors are awarding all of their cleaners. So it's taking all of the end of tenancies that were done on that date and thinking about what has that person awarded. for that job. Okay, so that query is now complete. So I'm going to Control and S to save it, and I'm going to call that query. I'm not going to number it because it feeds into, I suppose we could number it, we could call it 4A if we wanted to, but I'm going to call it Daily Star Rating. Okay, so that's essentially what I've done in there. Alright, we're going to close that, and then we are going to create another query. So this time this query is going to come from the query that we have just done. So the query that we've just done is this daily star rating query, and that's where we're going to take all of our things from. So we're only going to have one thing in there. So once again, we want to have our cleaning service, okay, and we are going to have our supervisor name and ID, just as we had before. Okay, now we don't need to this time have a date in there. So what we're looking now at is then the average daily star rating. So we're going to take our daily rating from here, and if you like, we're going to take the average of the average. Okay, so we're going to call this average daily rating. Okay, when we run that, what we've got now is that cleaning service. Everything looks pretty much exactly the same as it did before. Okay, we've still got 536 things happening. These things are just slightly swapped around. So once we're happy that everything in there seems to be working, that's exactly what the last query had. Okay, so that's basically pulled exactly what the last query had. We now want to take the average of the average. So instead of a group by, we now want to have the average of that. So when we run it, we've now only got 24 things. So we're now saying every time that Doc Robinson rates an end of tenancy, that is the average daily rating. So we've vastly reduced now the number of records that we had. So essentially now we've taken the average of what was the average. Okay, told you it was going to get complicated. So this query now, we're going to call, so the previous one was the daily star rating, so I'm going to call this the average of the daily star rating. I hope your typing is better than mine. Okay, and we will save that, and we will close that. Now we're going to create another query from the query that we have just created. So we're creating one after the other after the other. So this was the first one, the daily star rating. We then took the average daily star rating, and that's the query that we're going to create what we need now. And again, we're going to put in our supervisor ID and our supervisor name. Okay, from that query. Now what we want to take is we want to take the lowest of this average daily rating. So here we have the average daily rating that was pulled through from the other query. And now what we want is we want the lowest of that average. Okay, so lowest daily average. Colon. Now, if we run it, it looks exactly the same as what it did before for each of our supervisors. Okay, the only difference is that we haven't got in this circumstance what the cleaning job was. So the cleaning job at this point doesn't really matter so much. Okay, so what we want now is we want every time Doc Robinson appears for it to take the lowest of those. Okay, so we've already entitled it the lowest, but we haven't yet set that. So I click on my totals again. And this time I don't want the maximum of something, I want the minimum of something. So I'm going to click on min. And when I run this now, I've literally got one number for each of those supervisors in there. Okay. Okay, so Control and S to save this query here. And I'm going to now call that minimum average daily star rating. Okay, so let's save that. And then finally we get to do the very final bit. Let's close this and then create our final query. So this is actually now our query number 4. We want to have information about our supervisor from our supervisor table. We want information from the second query about the service. We didn't put the service in the last query that we did, so this has to come from the second one that we did. So the second one that we did was called the average daily star rating, which is the one at the top. Okay, and then finally we want the lowest daily average that we have just picked out from the last query that we've done, which is that one in there. So what we want to have is we want to have our supervisor, then we want to have our service, our cleaning service from here, and then we want to have our lowest daily average from here, and we can have a little look. There we go. And so for each cleaning service it has then worked out what the lowest daily average is for each of those things. Okay, I'm just going to save that as query, and this is query 4. So remember, query 4 was to calculate and display the lowest average daily star rating cleaning service for each supervisor. I don't think I'm going to bother giving that a name. In fact, I will. I'll just say star rating by supervisor. Okay. And then I'm going to close that. And then that should be query 4 finished. Had a little bit of time out, and just as an update to this, realised that things in these queries weren't quite working properly. Okay, so I figured out why. In the original query that we did, which was the daily star rating, you'll notice that we only selected 3 out of 4 of the tables because we felt that we didn't need the cleaner table. However, when that happens, then you lose some of the information that is going from one table to the next table. So it's not quite drawing the information properly. So this bit over here is very separate to this bit over here, and it doesn't show us any relationships like we know that it should. Okay, so that's what it looks like when we run the query without those relationships in place. So you'll notice the difference in just a minute. It's a very easy fix. All we need to do is show table and add in that cleaner table that we had before. What you can see now is that everything seems to be, if I put that in the middle in the right order, everything seems now to be a little bit more interconnected. So we almost needed that to make that join between the supervisor and the supervisor here and the cleaner and the cleaner here. So it almost is feeding into everything. When we run that, we now get a different set of data, which therefore means now that all of our other things will run properly. So if I save that and open our average daily star ratings, we've got 24 again, but we've got slightly different numbers. So you might have noticed that previously on the video we were getting the same average number for the lowest daily, and we didn't want to do that. So that's what our lowest daily average numbers should look like. And then if we open up our lowest star rating, that's what our data should look like in there. So now we should all be fixed just with that little adding that table in to create that connectivity. So apologies for not realizing that before, and that's the end of this video on how to do query 4.